I think it's time to start our workshop. It's so glad to see so many old friends and new friends. And so, yeah, let's start. I'll start with a quick opening remark and then hand over to our keynote speaker. So welcome to this NDSS workshop on security and privacy in standardized IoT. We call it SDIoTSec. This is the second year of this workshop. So I'm so glad to have Professor Jin Kemp and with me together to co-organizing this workshop. And thanks so much, Jin. So Jin is a professor at the Indiana University Bloomington, and me as an associate professor also there. And so nowadays the consumers increasingly rely on IoT products to manage essential aspects of daily life, including home safety, health, recreation, personal convenience, and the design and implementation practices of IoT are often known to be heterogeneous, and it often with vendor-specific protocol design development for device access, communication, security management. And this diversity posed significant challenges to both IoT security, privacy, and consumer usability. So in response, the emergence of IoT standards aim to address those issues. Notable examples in recent years include the Matter open source project, which is a major industry collaboration that provides a unified standard for IoT design and implementation. That Matter is supposed to simplify development for manufacturers and enhancing device compatibility for consumers. We also observed that the IoT labeling program of the Federal Communication Commission, known as FCC, they also seek to establish the security standard for manufacturers for the IoT labeling, IoT cybersecurity labeling. So this workshop aimed to promote research that investigates and evaluates the foundational role of IoT design standards and their implementations for the security, privacy, and the trustworthiness of IoT ecosystem. So first, I wanted to thank all our TPC members. We have 15 TPC members from university, from industry, national lab, and across many regions of the world. We also in the review process, we honored the double-blind review. We received 14 submissions. Out of them, 7 papers were accepted, including long paper and short papers. Out of the 7 rejected papers, we carefully selected 3 to present 3 posters. So we have 3 poster boards here. So the poster also please find the time to put your poster there. So each of the paper received either 2 or 3 reviews. So this year we received a submission from 23 authors from 23 universities, companies, and institutes. I put all their names here. I do not want to name all of them, but you can take a quick look. These are really span multiple regions in the world. So today we are also honored to have 2 keynote speakers, Professor Tsudik, distinguished professor of computer science at UC. Also Dr. Mei Wang. I think she's going to join us shortly. She's the CTO for IoT security at Palo Alto Networks. So a quick overview of the program today. Following my opening remark, we have the first keynote talk, and then a bit after 10, we have the coffee break with the poster session. we hope we have a longer time for the workshop, maybe next year. But this year, the program is a little bit packed. And then after the coffee break and the poster session, we have the second keynote by Dr. Mei Wang. And then we will have a paper presentation session. And after 12, a little bit after 12, we will have we will announce the best paper award and also a quick closing remark followed by lunch. So let's then maybe I'll hand over to our first keynote speaker, Ginny, and let's welcome our speaker.
Thank you. Okay, good morning. I'm a bit surprised to see a room this packed on a Monday morning when you could all be sleeping off your jet lag or enjoying this beautiful weather that this window is trying to obscure. It's really beautiful out there. And just reminding you, in case that we run out of oxygen in this room, there's an exit door right there for quick escape. But I am glad to see so many people. I don't know why you are here, but I'm glad to see you anyway. And thank you to the organizers for the invitation. I'm happy to be here, especially since I don't have to go through TSA to get here. It's just, what, an hour from where I am. So this warning, this is a sort of a, not exactly, but kind of a recycled talk. And by the way, in academia, there's just a finite number of talks going around. People recycle them. And so in case you might be surprised, but maybe not. So this is a recycled talk from the ACM-CCS keynote in October last year. So if you were there, now would be a good time to catch up on sleep. But if you weren't there, well, cool. And so this grandiose title, what is it supposed to be? Well, it's all about this, you know, the Armageddon. And this place here on this photo is a village, I guess, no, it's an excavation site, a geographical location called Har Megiddo, which means something in Hebrew. I don't know what it means, but it's in Israel. And the word Armageddon comes from Har Megiddo. So you can see it's been destroyed, right? And there's some excavations going on. So this talk is about an Armageddon that may come. But let's go to the actual subject of this talk, which is the IoT devices. And when I say IoT, I just use this as an abbreviation for all kinds of embedded creatures and smart gadgets that we have in our homes, offices. We wear them, we have them in our vehicles. Sometimes we even implant them in our bodies, or maybe not voluntarily. But suffice it to say that this ecosystem of smart IoT devices is rapidly growing and penetrating all kinds of sectors of everyday life. Fortunately or unfortunately, we are becoming, especially the younger generation, is becoming highly dependent on some of these devices and even addicted to them, right? So I'm not talking about smartphone addiction here. I'm just talking about smaller gadgets. So for the purpose of this talk, anything that is a smartphone or above is not an IoT device, okay? So what do IoT devices do? Well, they generally sense the environment or actuate the environment, or both, right? Most of them do both. And typically sensing drives actuation, sometimes actuation drives sensing, but they are usually hybrids of some sort. And they usually have multiple sensing capabilities and multiple actuation. They are often deployed in very large numbers. So that's already a big deal. Now you might think, well, wait a second. Is he talking about consumer devices, or is he talking about industrial devices? I'm talking about both. Think about all the consumer devices, like popular ones like Echoes and Nests and light bulbs, right? The smart bulbs. They are deployed maybe not in large numbers in your household, but are deployed by tons of households in your neighborhood. and all over the country. So they're deployed in large numbers because we tend to live in a world where we like to hear good reviews of products, right? And so we buy products that have good reviews. Most people aren't early adopters, right? They don't go out and buy a random company's product just because that they've never heard of, right? They go to a product that has been highly rated, or highly enough rated, and they buy from there. And so we have this herd instinct when it comes to buying things, right? And so in industrial automation, or just organizational automation, because I want to include the government here, well, industry and government, they like things cheap, right? And they buy things in large quantities, because in order to automate, I don't know, a shipyard or an airport or a stadium or a giant park, you need to buy things in large quantities, right? Whether these are motion sensors or tiny drones or smart doorknobs, you need to buy them in large quantities. And sometimes, not always, of course, but sometimes these devices aren't there just for entertainment or like make our life easier purposes. They perform safety critical tasks, of course, alarms and detectors of various sorts. And some, of course, more critical, like medical or sort of medical adjacent devices. They perform safety critical tasks. And of course, nobody here is surprised, because this is a security audience, that this ever increasing popularity of IoT devices results in, of course, ever increasing attack surface. That is very exciting and very, very attractive to all kinds of people and organizations that like to attack devices, including, depending on how you look at it, the good guys, right? Sometimes it's the good guys, whatever that means in your world, that are interested in attacking these devices. Also, no surprise to anybody that attacks that we should be really afraid of aren't the up-close and personal physical attacks, right? Because devices are installed in such large quantities and often geographically just distributed fashion, physically approaching a device may not be possible, or forget it, even scalable for an adversary. So for an adversary to physically attack a large installation of identical devices requires some pretty hefty logistical operation, and that's likely to be impossible, right, or unscalable. But there is always the way to attack them remotely, because most of those IoT devices have in some form a connection to the outside world. Now, you might be thinking of some specific devices, and I don't want to be really claim that I know exactly how all devices connect to the outside world. Some of them connect via a proxy, like an app on your phone. Some connect via a hub or a concentrator of some sort, and they communicate, I don't know, via Zigbee or something. Some use Bluetooth, some use Wi-Fi, some directly talk to the cloud, some talk through some other agents, but some of them talk to each other. So not only in many cases they are connected to the outside world, but they're also interconnected. And both connection to the outside world and interconnection facilitates propagation of malware. Okay? And so, coming back to the remote attack, it's the best way to attack these devices because, well, it's a scalable attack. You don't have to be up close and personal. You could be sitting in your grandma's basement somewhere in Krapistan, and if you found that malware that's going to penetrate some devices, well, great. You can be far away, and it's also the fact that you cannot be physically identified often, right? So you cannot be punished, you cannot be extradited, because nobody knows where you are, especially if you cover your tracks judiciously. And the adversaries are the usual range, right? From nation states to terrorist organizations to various opposition groups, which could be the good guys, for all you know. And of course, individuals who do it for fun and profit or any combination thereof. Feel free to ask questions, by the way. Don't like to hear myself talk uninterrupted. The goals of the adversaries, of course, vary. And this is, again, not a surprising list. A compromised device that has sensing capabilities allows exfiltration of potentially private sensitive data, right? A motion detector, a hacked motion detector that you have installed in your home might indicate to somebody whether there is somebody in the house, right, at the time. A camera is much worse than that, right? If you, God forbid, you have a camera inside your home. Compromised actuators can just affect the environment, right? So, you know, from something as silly as turning lights on and off to turning your washing machine on or flushing your toilet incessantly. Yes, they are smart, right? I mean, and they are interconnected. Also, I forgot to say that in the case of compromised sensors, sensing itself, right? If you compromise a sensor, you might not be interested in learning the sensed values. What you might be interested in is supplying fake sensing values that will in turn trigger actuation. Because in a lot of these devices, if you sense, let's say, a temperature above a certain degree, you turn on the AC. If the temperature or if the humidity is something goes above some, you turn on the dehumidifier, et cetera, et cetera. And last but not least, you have the well, actually almost last, is zombification. And zombification is much simpler. The adversary here is not so much interested in learning anything about the sensed values or hostile actuation. The adversary is interested in making your device a zombie. And that's what Mirai botnet kind of did, right? It did that, exactly. If you remember Mirai botnet from 2017. And so the idea is that forget taking over sensing and actuation. Instead, use the device as a platform for something. And there have been cases in the wild of crypto mining botnets and DDoS botnets that zombified large quantities of identical devices, sometimes not even identical, different types, and formed a botnet, global or massive botnet. And well, think about it, then now one, I don't know, device that has the power of, let's say, a Google Nest or some kind of a mid-range Echo, Amazon Echo, doesn't seem impressive, right? These are amoebas. I mean, what can they do? But they have a network interface. So if one of them starts generating packet traffic toward one or more victim IP addresses, that's nothing. It means absolutely nothing. But if 10 million of them start sending traffic to the victim IP address from all places all over the world, that trickle turns into a stream and a flood. And the same thing with crypto mining. One little device cannot perform any meaningful crypto mining. But working together in concert like ants, right, they can build something interesting, or maybe mine something interesting. So that's zombification. And then, of course, their simplest, dumbest thing is to brick the device. The actual purpose may not be anything more than just, I don't want these devices to be used. So the malware just comes in and refuses to work. It wipes out, let's say, application software and just sits there. And so you have a brick now, or a doorstop. So the starting points now of this talk is, and I apologize in advance to all the people here who work for IoT device makers. I'm not going to be particularly kind on them, but they're probably used to this by now. The IoT manufacturers do not today, have not in the past, and will not in the future prioritize security, and even less so privacy. Not organically, not by themselves. Just no way. Okay? And they have legitimate sounding excuses. Okay? Or actually, maybe not just sounding, legitimate excuses. They always have these typical budget constraints, right? The actual dollar cost, which sort of relates to the physical size of the device and impacts the performance of the device, because as we all know, being security people, security is an inhibitor, right? Nothing with security runs faster than it did before security, right? Bandwidth and all kinds of other constraints that are essentially what is the implication of introducing security on an IoT device? It's an overhead, and it gives you nothing, right? It produces nothing quantifiably beneficial to the consumer until something goes wrong. And most of the time, things don't go wrong. So why spend all this money, right, and all this effort? Why hire a security group, right? So what happens instead is that, like in many other computing spheres, IoT manufacturers react to security attacks. They don't anticipate threats. They typically react to attacks. All right, and well, that's the world we live in, and we'll probably keep living in this world for a long time. Let's not forget also this infamous rush to market syndrome. Right? You are the IoT manufacturer. You develop or come up with the idea for the next super useful IoT gadget. Okay? What is that going to be? Let's take a wild guess. It's going to be a smart hairbrush. With a smart hairbrush that you absolutely need, every day you can wake up in the morning and hopefully brush your hair, it will tell you and download to your app on your phone whether your hair is too brittle, too oily, too much dandruff, too long, losing hair, the color of your roots are showing, etc., etc. A myriad of useful information details it could deliver to you and make your life so much more exciting. How could you possibly live to this age without a smart hairbrush? So, if you are that manufacturer and you have this infomercial that I just tried to parody ready, you release the product and you don't care about security. You worry about it later. Because if you start worrying about all possible security and privacy threats, well, maybe you get beat by some other manufacturer who will introduce that same smart hairbrush without security and will get to the finish line faster and be the first in the market. And okay, I'm sort of half joking, but I'm half serious here. Right? The rush to market is a real thing. Then there's the fact that software, and there is always software on those devices. And then let's consider why. If there were no software, that IoT gadget would be a purely hardware device, right? Which means that if two things. One, it will cost more. It will be bigger because hardware is always bigger and costs more. That's just a fact. Two, you will never be able to modify it. Oh, on one hand, this is good. This is good. No modification, less chance of an attack, of success. But that means that you will never have to be able to improve its functionality. As is always the case, maybe due to rush to market, the first incarnation of the device goes out in the market, and then, oops, we can make it run faster by producing twice as fast by introducing some nifty software upgrade. Or we disabled some features because we weren't sure they were going to be useful, and now we can release a new version of software that will activate those features. Happens all the time, totally legitimate, totally understandable, but that means that you need software, right? So if you have software, that you must be able to update that software, which is nice, but that's also that backdoor for malware. Okay? And that's a problem. That's probably the biggest problem. And then last but not least, lack of assurance. So you do have software, you do have hardware, and by the way, even with pure hardware there could be problems, right? Pure hardware could have hardware trojans. They have been demonstrated in the wild. So you cannot introduce additional malware into a purely hardware device, but you can invoke hardware trojans that went unnoticed. Because of this, we have very little in terms of assurance when it comes to these IoT devices. We have neither formal assurance of software functionality nor hardware functionality. And let's look at us, ourselves, the customers. We are guilty too. We are the ones who encourage that kind of a behavior on the manufacturer's part. We tend toward monocultures. I already alluded to that, right? We have this herd instinct based on reviews, based on word of mouth, whatever. We tend to buy identical things because they're in fashion right now. Think about how the iPhone, I mean, I know iPhone is not an IoT device, but think about all these Apple gadgets that are considered to be so cool among a range of population ages. It's like people even shame each other, right? Oh, I can see you're messaging me from what is that, Android? A lot of snobbery there, right? That drives the trend toward monocultures. And also, let's not forget, the manufacturers, they like to lock us into their devices, right? They come up, Apple is a perfect example. They come up with a slightly better, shinier gadget, and they dangle it in front of our face, and like Pavlovian dogs, we go, I want to spend $2,000 on this. Yeah. And so manufacturers clearly want us to keep buying their products. Now, they don't also want us to buy throwaway products, right? So there's this, I think in the business world, there's a term for it, which I forget. There's a trade-off, right? The manufacturer, like car manufacturers, they don't want us to buy a car and 2 years later think it's a piece of garbage, I'm going to throw it away, right? Or it's a lemon. What they want us to do is to keep it for just long enough, right? But not too long, so we can buy the next generation. So they have that priority, and that definitely drives the trend towards monocultures. They want to keep us locked in their universe. And let's also not forget that organizations are also customers, right? It's not just individuals like us, organizations are customers as well. And they, as I said earlier, love to buy things in large quantities and identical types. Why? Because it's naturally easier to manage. You ask any IoT or any IT admin who deals with IoT devices, they don't want to deal with 5 different smart door locks in the building or 10 different light bulb types. They want the same type. They want to deal with one vendor, not 10 vendors. Well, without heterogeneity, you have homogeneity, and homogeneity means they're all the same, and you compromise one, you compromise all. So I borrow an example here from a paper, not too young, kind of about 6 years ago at S&P, that talked about, called Dominance, a New Trusted Computed Primitive. It had a very nice example. Actually, it's a nice paper because the subject of it relates to this talk, to the latter part of this talk. So it is not a real, it's a hypothetical example. But something like this is going on already. So we're in California, so you can relate. So let's say smart traffic lights, right? We have in many places here in this state, as I'm sure in other states, smart traffic lights, right? They don't just work on a regular schedule, right? And they adjust based on traffic flows, traffic conditions, and so on. So imagine, and the state doesn't manage those. The state outsources it to a company. Let's say your company manages this. And then you have basically an IoT hub hosted in the cloud that manages all the traffic lights in California. And there are cameras that report traffic conditions and sensors, et cetera. And based on now all that sort of combined intelligence, the IoT hub makes decisions and propagates dynamic commands to traffic lights, right, to operate according to the traffic conditions. That's wonderful. And now, suppose the attacker exploits a bug or a backdoor and hacks into this system. And basically, the result is you have a massive botnet, right? So all the traffic lights, all the IoT, all the sort of smart devices that constitute the traffic light ecosystem are controlled by a botnet. And it's not important what that botnet is going to do. Of course, it can wreak havoc on the traffic situation, but then again, people might not notice because we already have havoc. What is the problem is how do you fix it, right? This is really the point of the example. So you have malware, and it sort of controls all of the traffic lights, and there's nothing you can do without sending a person on a crane, or whatever that thing is called, in a crow's nest, to go up, physically go up to every traffic light and probably reprogram it using JTAG or something similar. And okay, that can be done, no problem. But how many traffic lights are there? Tens of thousands? And how much is this going to cost in terms of time and money? A lot, right? A lot. Logistical nightmare. That's what I refer this to. Logistical nightmare. So the same thing is, imagine that all your echo devices, I don't know how many people use them, but in general, maybe not in the security audience here, you don't use that many, but outside in the real world, people use a lot of these things. So I think about Amazon Echoes, and all of them are infected. And now Amazon puts out a bulletin and says, oh, everybody please stick something into this Echo and reprogram it using an app. Okay, people like you might do it, people like me might do it. Your grandma won't do it. Your dumb uncle won't do it. You know, your little sister might not do it. Most people will probably not do it, and if they'll do it on their own time, and it will take a while, which is a problem, right? That's a logistical nightmare. So the question is, can we do better? Okay? And my sort of intermediate bottom line so far in the talk is that we haven't seen nothing yet. The Mirai botnet is just a preview of coming attractions. And by the way, CrowdStrike. Does anybody remember CrowdStrike? Not that long ago. Was it 7, 8 months ago? August, right? August 2024? Now, you may say, whoa, that's a stretch. Why is he talking about CrowdStrike? It had nothing to do with IoT devices, right? Zero. Completely out of place. Well, not exactly. The analogy I make is that CrowdStrike essentially bricked a very large number of Windows machines, including servers. Why? Ostensibly because of a benign update. Benign intentioned update. Well-intentioned update that just screwed things up. Well, that's an example for us, right? The same thing could happen with IoT devices. And the damage could arguably be a lot bigger, especially if we consider that some of them are critical nature devices. And then this was a sleeper. In September, at the end of September 2024, there was an article just popped up. I remember it popped up all of a sudden in my news feed. The Justice Department announced this. A PRC linked, when I say linked, they mean PRC botnet. They have to use words like linked, alleged, etc. I don't have to use such words. This was a PRC linked botnet that infected a huge number of, look at that, consumer-grade routers, IP cameras, DVRs, and network-attached storage devices. Maybe the Armageddon has happened, but we haven't noticed. I didn't see this in the news at all. But this is a genuine article. You can still find it. So I suspect a lot of things are happening, and a lot of botnets get discovered without them getting the press. I'll be happy to share the slides. And so this brings me to the next part of the talk, which is really what I wanted to really talk about, is what we need in order to not prevent, but at least react intelligently to the upcoming looming threats of this IoT Armageddon. And it has to do with designing security services that are active rather than, as traditionally is, passive. Today, when you look at IoT devices, you will find that some of them have zero security features, like zero, nothing. And some that do are passive in a way that they must be invoked, right? So they provide maybe some more sophisticated or powerful devices like infotainment unit might even have a TPM chip. Some mid-range devices will have, or some of the higher end might even be running on Intel platforms that support SGX. Some smaller ones will have ARM Cortex platforms that support Trust Zone A or Trust Zone M for the smaller version. And then down from that, there's nothing, usually. There's no security features. I mean, there might be some software, but that's it. And so what all they do is detect compromise after it already happened. And they just, maybe at best, will report it or something. But that's it. So how does that help us, really? I mean, it's not nothing, but it's very little. Now, that's what I just said. So I use the terminology TEs and ROTs. TEs are trusted execution environments, and there's a trust zone is an example. SGX is an example. And ROT is a roots of trust. So there is a maybe not so subtle difference between the two. An ROT has to provide some form of attestation, has to be, it's not just a secure enclave. So the argument is out there whether SGX is an ROT. Yeah, some people say yes, some people say no. Trust zone is both an ROT and a TE. TPM is more of a ROT, not really a TE, because it doesn't execute anything, it just stores things for you. It's not programmable. By the way, none of this means any kind of tamper resistance. So tamper resistance is physical security, and it's out of scope here, right? Because we're talking about remote attacks in general. So the problem today is that the simplest malware that I referred to before as a bricking malware can just infect the devices and brick them all and just live happily ever after, right? So, and by the way, the malware for targeted for IoT devices exists. If you do a little bit of poking around the dark net, the dark corners of the internet, you will find such malware. Some of it is freely available. Some of it is available only as a description, and you could rent it for Bitcoin, of course. So you don't have to be very sophisticated hacker yourself. You can be a total script kiddie, and as long as you have money, you could rent a malware, and you can also customize its task, like crypto mining or DDoS or anything else. So the question then I ask is, what is the good? What good is that? Does it do for us to detect malware when detecting it means that we have to face this logistical nightmare, right? Of like manually or physically reprogramming the IoT devices, right? So yeah, we detected that there's been a problem. We detected the presence of a trapdoor or a vulnerability or malware already infected the devices. Now what do we do? Right? So my argument is for active stance or active ROTs, active TEs. And what that means is that, I'll tell you in a couple of slides. But let's consider first what happens when the malware infestation is detected. So like in the case with that PRC link botnet I mentioned earlier. Well, great. If you know that there is a known vulnerability is exploited in order to propagate malware, well, you just release the patch. It's already there. You propagate it. It will take some time. And if it's not an industrial device, if you have to rely on consumers, good luck, because consumers, as I already argued earlier, will not do, they're unruly herd, right? But okay, maybe that's an answer. But what if it's a zero-day exploit? Because it's very unlikely that a truly successful malware infestation will use a known exploit, right? Because if the exploit is known and the manufacturer has done nothing about it, they'll be in serious trouble. Well, we hope they will be in serious trouble. At least they'll get a lot of bad press. At least. But if it's a zero-day exploit, I think that's a more likely scenario. The real question is what to do in what I call the critical period between the time you detect and the time of availability of the patch or remedy of some sort. And that critical period can last hours, days, or even weeks. So the question is, what do? You know there's malware, and you might even know what kind of bad things it's doing or is going to do. But what are you supposed to do about it? Well, maybe a glib answer is to say, broadcast on the radio in the emergency channel, right? And say, turn off all your smart toasters now, okay? Or disconnect water to your smart toilet or you are going to be in real danger. Okay, but then what are you supposed to use? I mean, toilet is a critical function. Maybe a toaster you can live without for a few days. Try living without a toilet. So, but that's right, that's a silly example. Think about, I don't know, blood pressure monitors or some other more interesting device. I don't know, smoke alarms. Yeah, take off your smoke alarms. Great. And then what? What if there's a fire? So My point is that there's an ideal scenario in which, yeah, we discovered that there is some malware, and it infected large quantities of identical devices. The thing to do is to imagine that there is some kind of an emergency secure channel. You know, like in a hotel, or a hospital, or a movie theater, when the power is down, right? All of a sudden, the power goes off. What happens? Well, red, yellow lights pop out, right? Emergency lighting kicks in. The doors swing open, right? Or something like that. So there is some kind of what's called emergency functionality that is still available to us in the physical world, in an analog world, when bad things happen. Well, why don't we have something like that in the IoT world? Right? And my point is that if there was some minimal security functionality, essentially kind of like what we have with these TEs and IoTs, but in a more active fashion, an island of trust that remains impenetrable and inviolate on each device, then we can maybe communicate to it via some mythical secure channel and ask it to do very simple things. Right? Very, very simple things. Like maybe power itself off. Right? Because you think, oh, well, wait, why do we need to tell the device power itself? We could just pull the plug, right? Pull the plug. Because I say this because somebody asked this question before. Consumers know how to pull the plug. Everybody knows what a cord looks like. Unplug the damn thing. Okay, true. Most of us know how to pull the plug out of the wall. Do you know that the device is off? How do you know the device is off when you pull the plug? It could have a battery operation mode. Second, the devices may be deployed in places that are simply not accessible at all or not easily accessible to humans or their owners. Right? They could be in the ceiling. It could be encased inside a wall. What do you mean turn it off? Oh, turn off the power to the entire house, right? That will do it. So no, that's not a good solution. But if you had some tiny island of trust on the device, and you could tell it, power off, and it had like a hard wire to the power button, turn it off, or reset yourself, or shut off your interfaces. In other words, shut the hell up, because malware could be exfiltrating information or receiving commands. So it might be as simple as like, do not allow any incoming traffic except for the secure channel. Just drop all incoming application traffic. That could be as simple as that. That will disable the botnet, if there is in fact a botnet. So there are all kinds of things you can imagine, but it cannot be a very large set of things, right? Because the bigger you make this menu, the bigger that minimal functionality becomes. So that's a trade-off, of course. And I don't have a solution. I don't have a recipe for success here. It depends very much on the device itself, on what kind of device this is. So it's not one size fits all. Okay? But the main thing is maintaining minimal security functionality. There's another way. Somebody came up to me after the talk at CCS and said, well, most of these IoT devices that we have, consumer anyway, they are essentially analog devices that at some point became smart, right? They were dumb, analog, and they became smart, and they acquired this digital personality, like this mythical hairbrush I told you about, right? Well, wouldn't it be nice, and that person was totally right, I think it would be great, if there was just like a switch, a mechanical switch that says, kill the smart part. Like, go back to dumb. So I can still use the hairbrush, and it won't tell me about dandruff or gray hair, but it would be just a dumb hairbrush, right? Or whatever else that we're using, right? A watch, imagine a smart watch. It's like, dumb, become dumb. Just show me a dial, okay? I want time, not all this other stuff. I've actually frequently wished my smartphone worked like that. Then I just take the dumb part and just use it as a phone. Anyway, that's my argument. This seems impossible. At least what I envision here, seems impossible with today's trusted execution environments, and at least off-the-shelf and ROTs. But it is possible if we imagine what can be done with more active approaches. There is a slight detour I wanted to make here and motivate the need for such things from a different perspective. This came out of a conversation with an internet security researcher who said, well, you know, forget malware and forget your IoT things. That's like for the birds. But think about the internet, the really important things, the internet, right? So there is an increasing drive towards AIification of internet routers. All the network, like Cisco's of this world, they love, you know, the current sort of global buzz about AI and ML, and they want to AIify functionality of internet routers. That's all nice, and maybe it will result in better traffic management and all kinds of things like that. But the moment you put AI software on a router, you're probably asking for trouble because it learns and evolves, right? You don't need to like update it with patches, right? Maybe it'll just sit there and evolve, kind of like chatbots learn, right? Well, if without any malware, without any outside malfeasance, that AI morphs itself organically into something hostile. Oops, the internet grinds to a halt. We're done, right? The internet will just go down. Now you may think this is like, oh my God, this is the sky is falling scenario. That's never going to happen. Well, you've seen chatbots. Maybe if you use chatbots, they do daydream, right? They do come up with some bizarre crap once in a while, right? That's like out of this world, right? And so, is it too far to imagine, or too much to imagine that AI software could just go berserk organically? I don't think so. So, without some kind of security functionality that cannot be influenced by software, we cannot fix the problem that I'm trying to allude to, right? We could, otherwise, if we had that functionality, tell the router to shed its AI skin and go on as before with some boring deterministic or whatever traffic management or forwarding strategies. And never mind that scenario, that's even bizarre. Anyway, continuing on. So what can we actually do? Well, in the 10 minutes that I have left, I'll try to do it quickly. If we have, well, there are different kinds of IoT devices, a whole range. If you have devices that are like truly like one-cell organisms of the IoT world, which have no kernels and no virtual memory, these are like smart plugs and smart bulbs. They don't have an operating system, etc. So there's just a bare metal environment where one application program runs typically in a control loop. So for those, there's no hope because if you don't modify their hardware, you can never have any security. You cannot just get blood out of a stone, right? So there are some examples. This paper I mentioned from S&P 19, I think some Microsoft people did that work, authenticated watchdog timers. And some of our work from my lab called Garota shows how to do these kinds of things by modifying hardware of such simple devices. For mid-tier IoT devices that already have some security functionality, and I mean, when I say some, I mean hardware, right? So if you have an ARM Cortex-M series that usually comes with a Trust Zone M, right? That's a smaller, sort of slimmer version of Trust Zone A. You can do this without hardware modification. So you can introduce active security functionality of the kind that I described without modifying any hardware, and that's a nice feature, right? It's a nice thing to know that you can take a COTS, a commercially off-the-shelf device, and actually configure it to implement active security functionality. And that was done. I think the same people that did authenticated watchdog timers showed in the paper in Asia CCS 2020, and then a few years later we had a paper at CCS that showed how to do this for a completely different purpose, but with the same general idea in mind. Now, RISC-V is starting to emerge as a very popular platform for these mid-range IoT devices, even lower than mid-range. And RISC-V brings a lot of hope because it has physical memory protection, which is something that ARM Cortex does not have. And so physical memory protection is a very nice, rich feature that might allow us also to to implement security functionality of the active security functionality without modifying hardware. But that remains to be seen. That's just a hope. And for higher-end devices, well, there's like ARM Cortex-A, there's trust zone, full-blown trust zone, so it's all doable. And what that means is for manufacturers, that could be good news. That all you need to do is provision the device before deployment. You need to provision it properly, and you could implement some of these active security functionality features without modifying hardware. Now, if this talk was longer, I would give you 2 examples. And this one I mentioned before is called PISA. This is all about, I'll just do a brief infomercial for this. This is all about another topic that I think relevant to this workshop, which is how to make people aware of ambient IoT devices. Like in a room like this, where we walked in and we have no idea who owns and operates this place, and there are some number of IoT devices that sense and actuate upon us, or can sense and actuate upon us, but we don't know about them. They may not be perceivable. Okay, so the main idea here is it would be nice to know that if you had like an app on your smartphone, then when you walked into a space like this and opened the app, that you would hear announcements, secure announcements, from nearby IoT devices and would be able to localize them. Now, it's a technical piece of work, and it comes in a couple of variations. There's another one coming up at PETS this year, but it has a big usability problem because you don't want to overwhelm people with useless information, a la, cookies. Remember cookies? Pop-ups with. Yeah, so that's an unsolved problem. But it shows how to use Trust Zone M in this sort of fashion to obtain active security services. And this one is for, this work, Garota, is for very small, like TI MSP 430 type devices, doing the same thing. Okay, so going towards the end of the talk, IoT devices, as I hope you know, or if you didn't, maybe I convinced you, face numerous and increasing security challenges and threats. Unfortunately, I think things will get worse before they will get better. Customers, I don't mean you, general customers, will not get smarter. And manufacturers won't do anything without, I think, 2 things. First, regulations, guidelines, right? Without it, no way. And I think that was mentioned during the introduction. And then new research by this community, right? Those 2 things have to happen for a situation to have any hope of getting better. I think prior research, some of it by my group and lots of it by other people, has made some progress, but a lot remains to be done. And we just need to be prepared for large-scale IoT attacks. So just know where all your devices are and be ready to stomp them to death if you need to. So again, to finish with a platitude, it's better to be prepared for a war that never happens than not to be prepared for the one that does. And more concretely, and this is almost the last slide, what do we need to do? Well, I think we need to design new active ROT and TE architectures and schemes. Should not limit ourselves to ARM Trust Zone, because that would be a monoculture. And let's not forget that inside every TE, like Trust Zone or SGX, or whatever the SV, something that AMD makes, inside all of those hardware components, there are tens of thousands of lines of code. Sometimes maybe even more than tens. And that code is not assured or formally verified. We mostly don't know what it is. Now, it is hardware, but it could be full of holes. It's not, we don't know. So today, it's natural for us to treat them as a kind of a secure black box. And I don't mean, all this I don't so much care about these exotic side channel attacks that you see in the crypto hardware literature. But even without those, how can we trust this massive implementations that went into the design of that hardware? We can't. So the only thing we can do is maybe diversify a little bit. Now, to the best of my knowledge, there is no formally verified trusted execution environment. Not sure that one can be built. It would be nice. The closest in the formally verified anything space we have today is SEL4 from Data 61 in Australia, from like, what, 12 years ago. But that, don't be fooled, is an excellent piece of work, an amazing feat. But that microkernel is only guaranteed to be formally, give you assurances and be secure, et cetera, on one hardware platform, one specific hardware. The moment you move it to anywhere else, it does not guarantee to do anything. Anyway, the other thing not to forget is active security techniques can conflict and, in fact, go against safety critical functionality of the device. That is a fundamental conflict. That I have no answer for that. Right? How to reconcile them remains to be seen. It might be also, for the type of security functionality that I envision, standard network interfaces might not be applicable. That means if your device has a Wi-Fi and a Bluetooth, or both, or Zigbee, or whatever, those interfaces are generally wireless, right? Because most IoT devices are wireless. That means that those interfaces might not be available if there's a large malware infestation going on. Not because an adversary is up close and personal and jamming you, but because the internet is congested. So it might not be possible to reach the device, even if it has that security functionality, and tell it what to do. And that is a whole different problem. Right? So it's not as simple as I alluded to, right? Or at least I hope I didn't make it sound like it's a simple problem. We need also all kinds of other bookkeeping and administrative stuff like credential infrastructure, because if you have the emergency secure channel and emergency secure functionality, it should not be invocable in an insecure way, right? Otherwise it becomes itself an attack vector. And also we need good crypto. Enough said, right? That's it. Thank you so much for staying awake. See you end of my talk.